Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Hidden Histories Collective. We're excited to have you this evening. I'm your host, LaChris Robinson Jordan, with Brian Isom Underwood. And we also have an amazing guest tonight. His name is Paul Blackwell, and we're going to be diving in like right now. But, Brian, if you have any opening words, we'd love to hear those.
I would say welcome to you all to Hidden History Collectives. And I'm thrilled that you guys are joining us today as we embark on more stories, shared stories from individuals, regular individuals who are family historians in their own rights, digging the crates, pulling data from family members. So I thank you for tuning in, and hopefully, if you're open-minded, you will glean possibly some tools of how to dig into your family's crates and obtain and hold dearly the family history that you are part of. So let's dive in.
Yes, let's. Well, Paul, thank you so much for joining us this evening. We are super excited to have you. And Brian told me about you. I was like, yes, let's have him ASAP. And so what we'd love to do is just tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey to becoming the family historian.
Okay, well, I grew up in Alabama, okay, and I always knew that I had at least two great-grandfathers that were Native American, but I also had a rich understanding of African history, well, African American history. My parents and grandparents really did a good job with that. But when it comes to Native American, we knew it, but we couldn't talk about it because at that time, people would ridicule you if you said you were anything but of African history. But then I would hear like whispers from a lot of people saying that their grandmothers were Native American, but that was kind of on the down low. But so we always knew that we had a Native American ancestry. Okay.
Wow, that's fascinating. So and I've heard this before where people have said that they couldn't talk about it, and that is actually truthful. It's documented. It actually was legal as well, and that's another topic for another discussion.
Mm.
And so we'd love to find out how you navigated that despite the public scrutiny and the whispers that you'd hear sometimes. How did you navigate around that?
Well, my job kind of helped me with that too, because I worked for the Department of Defense and I travel a lot. So I could go to a lot of places and look for maybe native cities and things like that. And maybe I'll get into that a little bit as we talk. Okay. But in the beginning, my father's family had reunions every year. And when on the day of the picnic, we would first have to listen to old stories and genealogies. But most of the boys could get up and leave early, but they made sure that I stayed there and listened. And really, I enjoyed it to some extent, but sometimes I wanted to go play football as well. So I had to sit through the entire discussion, and they tried to pour everything they knew in me. So that was the beginning of my navigation. But now, if you want to go really in how I do that, I started researching my ancestry back when we were using microfiche, and we had to actually go physically to the locations and look at the microfiche. Okay. Now, eventually, they graduated to us renting microfiche from the locations, and I'd go to the library and look at those. Okay. So I looked at census reports. I looked at wills and estates. I looked at land records. That was the beginning of it. Okay. Do you want me to keep going, or do you want me to stop, pause, or let you Go
I'm going to
ahead.
ask you a question about, for the audience that does not know what microfishing is, could you explain what microfishing is?
Well, microfiche was a thin skin film that you put on a screen, and you had to look closely, and the room had to be somewhat dark for you to see it. Okay, it was like a negative for the photograph, but most people don't even know what that is anymore. But
Yes.
that's what we had to do, and it really wasn't good on your eyes either. So because everything wasn't clear. It's not like it is today. Okay.
You mentioned you mentioned that you were forced to sit by the elders' side
Yes.
while your other cousins and siblings went out and played. How old were you?
Well, it started when I was about, I guess, 8 years old. They
Wow.
pulled as much as they could in me, and anytime they saw me, when I would go and visit them, they would tell me things that they wouldn't talk about to anyone else. Okay. And I'd ask their children, did they talk to you about that? And they said, no, they never mentioned that to me, you
Mm.
know? So I was the one that they chose to pour all their information into.
Oh, that's amazing. I love that.
Wow.
I love that.
Wow.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, because I think that our elders in the family, they know who to choose to give that information to. I see it happening in my own family, where they're choosing who to pour into. And not saying that it's, necessarily anyone's a favorite, but I think they see your curiosity. Would you say that was part of it, was that you were really curious?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Definitely. Mm-hmm.
Yes. So tell me some stories about the what they poured into you. Do you remember a specific story they would tell you?
Well, they tell me that a lot of them were about Native Americans. Okay. Um, my grandmother had a sister that went to Oklahoma, and they lost her. And for years, they didn't know where she was. But eventually they sent someone and found her and brought her back to Alabama. Okay. And then another story was my grandparents, when it came to time to, now this was all under just inside the family because, like I said, I didn't talk about this. When it came time for them to make a decision about going to Oklahoma, they decided not to go. Okay. So they changed their name and blended in with the black community in the closest town to where they were. Because, see, they were in a place called Spring Garden, and Spring Garden is in Cherokee County, Alabama. And at one time, it actually had been formerly the Cherokee land, okay? It was one of the places, if not the place, where the upper Creeks and Cherokees were positioned before they went to Oklahoma. Okay, so that's part of the story too. How they gathered them right there in Spring Garden. Okay, and they changed their name and moved into Piedmont, Alabama, as a means of survival because it was dangerous to be known as a Native American at that time. Okay, because the whole aim was to move them off their land and make it available for white people.
Yeah.
So, and I could tell stories about my black ancestry as well, but that is my African American ancestry. I should say it that way, because my grandmother's youngest sister actually used the term "other black folk" when she was talking about them and African Americans. Okay, she saw the Native Americans as black people as well. Okay.
Fascinating. Utterly
Wow.
fascinating. Wow. This is, Paul, thank you for all of this information, because we need to hear this. And there's so many people who I know are watching this who are going to be saying, I have those stories too.
Yeah.
And this is so encouraging. I absolutely love this. So I love to dive deeper into this whole concept of them moving and pushing the American Indian into a certain area, as they're trying to move you out. That's incredibly fascinating to me. One of the things I understand is that many did not leave. They did not go to Oklahoma. They stayed put, which is indicative of what we see in the South. We're still there. The majority of us are still in the Southeast. We've not left. So could you tell me more about that decision to stay? I think that's quite fascinating too.
Well, the decision to stay, they still had relatives. I mean, they knew that they had strong Native American ties, but they had family that was just considered African American. So it was leaving their home, okay, if they left and went to Oklahoma, okay, and there was no promise that that was going to be any better anyway if they moved away, okay. Because see, one of my grandfather's brothers, he actually went to Oklahoma, but he didn't like it, and he moved on into California. And some of my he ended up in Los Angeles, and some of our relatives went to the Bay Area, and they're still out there now. Okay, but it was all about keeping family together more than anything, because people were dying on the way to Oklahoma, and some of them didn't even have shoes. You see, and so that was that was the main issue: is survival and keeping the family together.
Yes.
When I talk to people, individuals who say they have indigenous in their families, and the question that comes to mind right now that I'm trying to make sense of it, and the mixture, every race has a mixture of white looking, mulatto looking, and dark looking. How is the impact? A lot of times the African Americans and the Indians, they commingled, right? They had, they intermarried, right? And can you talk about the mix up? How, certain individuals lost their identity based off their skin color, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense, but some of it was manufactured and some of it was just people coming together, okay? See, and when you're tracing your Native American ancestry, if you didn't go to Oklahoma by a certain time, you lost your identity as a Native American, okay? And there were roadblocks put in place to keep you from finding that history. But what happened, see, that was an entire Native American history that was ongoing before Columbus. There's the late Dr. Jack Forbes of University of California, Davis. He wrote a book, the America's discovery of Europe, not the other way around. In other words, he said that they had been going back and forth between the United States, between America and Africa and Europe for centuries.
Yes.
But and that part of it has totally been abolished from history.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yes.
Now, have you all heard the same thing? Have you heard any sources that said similar things?
Absolutely. We actually we have two videos that we've uploaded in the last week and a half. It was called 1671, and then we also have one called Erased from History. So those are two videos that show the I guess how America was described before 1619. And so we don't talk talk a great deal about going to Europe, but there's a great deal of history around us long before Europe even came. And so these are just eyewitness accounts. I would say over 100 sources in these books that really detail what America looked like over the course of the time that they've been coming here for centuries. And of course, you're going to have your naysayers, because it's not in our history books. And when I tell people these old books that were published in the 1600s in the Library of Congress and the Smithsonian Library, everyone's like, well, why aren't they talking about it? Like, well, there's a lot of books that people aren't talking about. So yes, I mean, in order to have this rich history, these established cities, these established systems, where do you think they got them from? They didn't just think them up out of thin air. So we've been around for centuries. I don't want to get biblical, but yeah, we're going to get biblical. Because
see, that impacted me too. My people were in the ministry, so I knew the Bible, and I knew the Bible as a history book as well.
Yes.
And I didn't know that until I started working, because every organization has a historian. And they look for people that know history. So when they found you and knew that you knew history, that would elevate you automatically to the top of the organization. But you still did your own work. But if there was anything related to history, they would pull you out of work and take them with you to be a part of that. And that's what happened to me. Okay.
Amazing.
But back to Brian's question, to add a little more. Sometimes they would bring Europeans in and have them marry into the native population. That's the way colonialism works.
Yes.
They come in and they create a lighter group of people, and they present those people as the natives. But if you go deeper into that area, you'll find darker complexion people that have the same features, and they are the Native Americans. The native people. You see that in Australia today. Mm-hmm. You remember the tennis player Yvonne Goolagong, I believe that was it.
Yes.
Well, she was supposed to be an Aboriginal of Australia, but she looked white. Mm-hmm. Okay, but it's just too many of those Maoris, as they call them in Australia, for her to just represent the original people. But that was their intent, is to create a lighter complexion people to represent the native people. The same thing in Mexico. Okay. Mm-hmm. They know that, the real historians in Mexico, they know that black people were there first because they have the Olmec heads. Have you seen those?
Yes.
The 10-foot tall heads.
That's right.
I saw those in Mexico City, and that blew me away.
Yes.
Okay.
And those are really making its rounds across the internet here when we talk about indigeneity and who the original peoples were. And if you're going to get scientific with it, dark skin has been around for forever. And even scientists will tell you that in terms of dating dark skin, 300,000 plus years old, and light skin or pale skin is only about maybe, I think they say 10,000 years old, if you will. So this whole concept of melanin, this whole concept of the dark man, the first human through evolutionary decades and ways, has been here forever. So if one even turn to science will tell you yes. And but yes, to your point, you're absolutely right. The Spaniards were known for doing this, particularly in Mexico, and having, I don't know, probably 30 categories for their caste system. It's pretty intricate.
Now, I have a slide, if you want me to show you, of a painting of Native Americans, how they looked in the 1600s in Brazil. If you'd like to see that.
I'd love to see that.
Please share. I would love to see it.
We showed some of those too in our video.
Can I share my screen?
Absolutely.
Okay. Okay, I'll do that.
Okay.
All right. Let's see.
I love this. Paul, you are a wealth of information.
Okay. This is these are paintings by a guy named Albert Eckhout, and he was a Dutch that went to Brazil in the 1600s. And they make the point that he had never stepped foot in Africa. And this is the way he drew the natives of Brazil. Mm-hmm. And you can see that they were Black people. Let me explode that a little bit more.
Yes. Fascinating.
You see?
Mm-hmm.
So that's how Native Americans looked in the beginning. Mm-hmm. And then let me show you one other picture. Mm. Do you remember this guy here?
Oh, yes. Yes, he came out to be, didn't they say he was Italian in the end?
There it is. You see what's written down there. He wasn't
even...
We grew up thinking of him as representative of Native Americans, right?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Mm-hmm.
You see, the caption said that he was born in Italy, right?
That's right.
He was a son of a first-generation immigrant from Italy. Mm-hmm. And he changed his name from DeCorti to Corti and then to Cody. And we knew him as Iron Eyes Cody.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I'm saying? Iron Eyes Cody. And we saw him crying because they were polluting America. But this is the image that they wanted to accept as a Native American. Okay. And believe it or not. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. You just sparking. I forget the title of the book. I think it was called The Making of an Indian in Hollywood. They actually wrote about how they, quote unquote, made the Indian and the images that they used in Hollywood to make this image. I haven't read the entire book, but when you said that, I was like, yes, there are documents and books written about this.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
This was an economic decision because if everybody if everyone knew that they were part Native American or Native American in whole, they would have to pay out a lot more reparations to them. You know, that's what the land.
Exactly.
That's reparations. Mm-hmm. Okay. So it was an economic decision to make a Native American. And in fact, they had a term called a $5 Native American or a $10 Native American, where white people could come over here and just pay $10 or $5 to be classified as a Native American.
That's right. That's right. And it was about the land. And there was a Supreme Court case too. I think it was in the 1920s. I forget the name of the actual case, but the Supreme Court had basically told these quote unquote white men to stop with the madness and stop trying to marry indigenous women to get the land. So that was a Supreme Court case because it was out of control. And, there's so many instances and cases where they've been doing this forever. And, and to your point, to speak of Cody, it goes back to when you think of those who also were a part of the original treaties that we also were dealing with. Some of those people were also mixed. Their fathers were European. So we don't want to touch that, do we? We're going to get real with it. A lot of the folks who were negotiating these treaties on our behalf were not really working for us.
Well, in the case of the Cherokees, you had a guy that really declared himself the chief. Mm-hmm. You had John Ross, who was really fighting for the people. But then you had this guy, John Ridge, that usurped his authority and signed the treaties to hand over the Cherokees' land. Mm-hmm. Okay. But he, like you said, he had been educated by his white father. Okay. But he could still say that he was Cherokee. Okay. Because his mother was Cherokee. So that's exactly what you were talking about. I believe that's what you were talking about.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm so glad we're talking about this because it's these intricacies that get missed in the dialogue and the discussion. So,
Mm.
Paul, I'd love to get your opinion. And you, since we're talking about who's who, when we talk about what's been happening legally with the Cherokee, yes, and we're talking about what's happening with the Creeks and all these different, as we call the Black freedmen or the freedmen, they're now being recognized. They're now being said, yes, you can come into the tribes. I think that's quite interesting now that we've had to turn to the law to now tell, reiterate what we've always known. And we've had to fight for that. So, what do you say for us who are we might not necessarily be enrolled in the tribes, but how do we move forward with this understanding and these legal cases coming down the pipe? Do you have any thoughts about that?
Well, it's a tough one. I should have left that up because that was another big roadblock. And I do need to put that book back up because it relates to what we're talking about.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I had like 20 questions ready to go, but we're talking about so much here, and I want to stay in the moment here.
And I love the fact that how organized you are about the data, and you got, a whole PowerPoint presentation. I'm just blown away,
Yes.
Okay. Do you see this slide that says Walter Plecker?
No, I do not see it.
You don't see it yet?
Do we need to share this screen again? But yes, Walter Plecker, I'm familiar with him. He's going to be on my roster here pretty soon because he's a character out of Virginia. Mm-hmm.
Okay,
we see it.
Brian, have you heard about him?
I have not.
Okay, this guy was the state registrar for the Bureau of Vital Statistics in Virginia from 1912 to 1946, and he died the year after he retired. But he was a devout white supremacist, eugenicist, and everybody know what eugenics is, knows what that is. That means good genes. That's the Greek word that it originated as a Greek word that has to do with good genes, okay? Eugenics. Now, he committed what they call paper genocide after co-founding the Anglo-Saxon clubs of America. So have you both of you heard of the one drop rule, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Now, what people don't realize that the one drop rule was put in place by what we call today the Office of Management and Budget. Again, it was all an economic system decision. Everything was about money. Okay. So a lot of white people had to deny one of their parents or grandparents or great-grandparents to become white. And so there are many white people like that. I have them in my family that my father knew them when he lived, but I don't know who they are. I know their names, the family names, because some of them took a different name coming out of slavery. Okay. So this guy led reclassifications of thousands of Virginia's Native American and called them colored. He was about establishing one race, what he considered a pure white race. And then everybody else would be kind of mixed up together and called colored. So he changed birth certificates, census records, marriage records. So he did all of that. So that is one of the biggest roadblocks to going back and finding our Native American ancestors, our links anyway. So, but we can still kind of see it in the census reports, because if you're looking for your ancestors and you see them as a white person in one census, and the next census you see them as a mulatto, and then finally you'll see them as colored. Mm-hmm. You know something is wrong.
That's right.
Something is wrong. Okay. So you look for that. When you learn to look for that, it's easy to pick up.
Yes, I'm glad you're mentioning that, Paul, because as a genealogist, what I started to do was I have and I just started about maybe 30 or so relative where I note the year and I note their status And it could be, yes, white, it could be mulatto. But then when you get towards I want to say the 30s and 40s and the 50s, they're now Negro or they're colored. So you can see that there's really specific years where they really just changed us out altogether.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Like I said, this happened in 1924, the Racial Integrity Act of 1924 in Virginia. Okay. Mm-hmm. And so everybody somewhat followed this guy's pattern. Okay. And it spread all over the country. Now, he actually gave a presentation in New York in the 30s, and some of Hitler's commanders attended that conference. Mm-hmm. So I'm wondering, did he give them the idea of what they did in Germany?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I can believe it. I can totally believe it.
Planting the seed.
Mm-hmm. And then the South Africans said they got their system of apartheid from us. Mm-hmm. Okay. From the United States. So it was people that were in these eugenics clubs and organizations that promoted that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, this guy, the strange thing about it, now I live in Maryland, in the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area. And he believed in separation of the races, right? But he made exceptions for descendants of Pocahontas. Mm-hmm. And up here, we know that Pocahontas' father was represented as a black man. So he made exceptions for them. And he also made exceptions for the Pomaki Indians. Mm-hmm. And those people are still in positions of authority in their area, but they consider themselves black today. Mm-hmm. But this guy made that. Now they're very light-skinned people, but they're black people. Yeah. And if you don't know their story, you just say they were black people, but he made exceptions for them because he knew that they were lighter complexion Native Americans. Now, he accused Native Americans of trying to pose as white people. He said they were trying to get into the white race. And that's why he classified most of them as colored. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, he was a character. And when people think about, when people really think about coloring and they think about who first came here, when you really start peeling away the layers, many people were passing, even when they came from Europe. Because when you look in the old papers, they were classifying people in the old papers. They were calling them fair, they were swarthy, they were tawny. So even for the people who came here in early America, they were mixed people. That is a thing that we have to keep remembering. Even though people have all these paintings, don't let those paintings deceive you, because there's a lot going on there too. That's a whole nother subject for why they were trying to keep making people look lighter and lighter and lighter. But when you really go into the documents, you begin to realize that people were mixed everywhere. And so they had to make these classifications and distinctions so that no one could come into the club, so to speak, because they had an agenda, like you talked about, when they were trying to lighten their races or lighten their families. That's real talk.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Now, the thing about it, it's something in the European iconography when they would do paintings. My father was a veteran of the Korean War, conflict, that is. Okay, when I was born, he was still in the Army. Okay. Well, when he came back to the United States, he stopped in Germany and he had some pictures of us. Me and my mother and his parents, okay? And he had paintings done of them. And they painted us white. They painted us white.
Wow.
So you assume that the pictures you're looking at throughout history, you consume that the painters had integrity. Mm-hmm. But they had no integrity. If they were heroic, they were going to paint them white.
That's right. That's right.
Okay? Because if you look at some of the coat of arms in Europe, you'll see black people all in those
Everywhere.
Yeah.
coats of
Everywhere.
arms.
And I'm going to say something too about that. When you look at some of the paintings, like if you were to take all the images of Beethoven, you're talking about the paintings and sketches, they all look different. But then you find some where Beethoven had curly hair. You see him really having more, I guess you can say, melanin type features. So I always say to folks, quit looking at these paintings. You must try to search for all the images of these individuals. And you will find one or two that is buried somewhere in the National Portrait Gallery in the UK or in the Library of Congress. You're like, hold on. I found one. I think it was the Library of Congress. It was one of Napoleon. Napoleon was jet black.
Mm-hmm.
Jet
I
black.
didn't know that, but I can believe
Oh,
it.
I still have it. Oh, I screenshot that. I saved that for forever. I said, why would they paint him as jet black?
Uh-huh.
So, yeah,
See,
I'm sorry.
oh, go ahead. You were talking. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I want to hear what you have to say.
Well,
You know,
now, if we get back to the people that were already here, I heard about Chief Tuscaloosa, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I went to school at the University of Alabama, and there's a river that flowed past campus, right? And it was called the Black Warrior River. Okay.
mhm.
Well, some mornings between classes, I was drawn to that river, and there was a little picnic table out there on the banks of that river.
Mm.
Nobody would be there, so I would sit there and maybe read a little bit before I went to the next class. And I wasn't thinking about it, anything about it, but years later, when I found out that the Cherokees, Chickasaws, the Choctaws, and the Seminoles were the same people. They were part of the Muskogee Nation, and it went up even up north where you got Muskegon, Michigan, and all of that. And Chief Tuscaloosa was the chief of that area of Muskogee, and he had a whole infrastructure around that area: Alabama, Georgia, Mississippi. But Hernando de Soto encountered him, and his chroniclers wrote a detailed description of Chief Tuscaloosa. And he described him as a tall, extremely tall black man. And his name, Tuscaloosa, if you translate it into English, it means black warrior. So that's why that river is called the Black Warrior River, because at one time it was called the Tuscaloosa River.
Mm.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So this stuff is in plain sight
That's right.
if you dig a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Plain sight, the names. I mean, you can't miss the names. The locals that live here now.
There you go.
Like we've been brainwashed and fed African American, and then I would hear stories of so and so was Indian, so and so was Cherokee, but like nobody cared to do the digging, and I was like, well, how come nobody cares? Like I would hear it, and then it would fade away, and it would be back to African American. Here, and like you said, right down the street, the walking trail I go to is Black Creek. It's right there in our faces. I remember my neighbors who are about 20 years older than me reminding me that they found a canoe in the back of our house. They were playing as kids. He said, man, we found a canoe. He said it could fit 20 people. So it's right here, but yet we miss it because we've been fed. And like we go back to the movies, how powerful the images are when you're watching old westerns and the Indians, and they look they're depicted in a certain way, and then we download that image as the only image of what they're sharing with us. because it's an art form. Movies are an art form, but then we lost it. But it's right here in front of our faces. It's in the land. The names, all indigenous, and we come from this. It's like, how could we not come from this land? And it has Indian statues and memorials all around, arrowheads all around. How could we miss it and say, oh, we came from Africa. We only came from Africa. We have no indigenous lineage. And like you said, if a lot of us wake up, then they would say, hey, we got a problem on our hands, and they can prove it.
Now, here's something to really watch out for. Since they know this information is getting out and people are waking up, the next thing they'll do is try to make us pick between the two.
Yes.
But that is like picking between your mother and father.
Right.
Okay? You're the descendant of both your parents. Okay.
Right.
So that we do have African ancestry. But now, according to Jack Forbes, it looks like there were more of us. We are more native than we are African.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Right.
And I'll say this to that, when we and you're absolutely right, there will come a time when we will have to start even going further into our identity. That's why I've been telling people to start doing their genealogy and getting their paperwork together, because you will have to, because now, we know we have to do that when we seek enrollment in the tribes. They want proof, they want paperwork, all of that. We get it. But I'll say this too, that there is this thing that we have to acknowledge and say, and it always goes back, and I'm a paralegal in training, so I go back to the law, and I go back to what you can prove. And that is going to be so vital to us. And as you know, America is the most heavily documented nation in the world. Yes, you can go to Europe, you can go to certain parts of Canada, but we are pretty heavily documented. So that is what's really going to matter when it comes to a lot of these legal cases that we have been winning, is it's going to be about the documentation. So when it comes to the African, yes, there will be people who can prove that somewhat, but when you really get on down to it, it's going to come on down to the fact that you're indigenous, because that is what's on paper, that is what you can prove, and that is going to be the tell-all for many people. And, it's interesting. You have to say to yourself, what's the bigger game here? And why were we led down this African road in the first place? And so you have to say, it goes back to what you've always been saying. It's about the money. It's about the money.
Now,
the money.
when it comes to navigating who we are, I'll show you another slide. I think I'm still sharing my screen.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I began. Now, I took looking at census records to develop this screen. Okay. What I did, I took all of the families associated with us, and you see Underwood on there as well, in a couple of places. Okay. And I went back to the oldest records, the records of the oldest people. Now, I have one up there, Albert Blackwell, who was my father's direct ancestor on his father's side. He was the grandparent that came out of slavery in 1865. And I could only find him and his wife, Sarah Blackwell, using the Freedmen Bureau records in Memphis, Tennessee. Okay. Okay, so I went back and found out where they were and where they came from. Okay. And so I put the maiden names, if I could find them, of their wives. Okay. And then you see these eras coming together in a portion of Alabama that we consider this is where we all converged. And that was a marriage between Africans and Native people right here. And I talked about Spring Garden, where they were positioned, okay, to be taken to Oklahoma. So then I summarized like this, okay, and tell where they came from. Okay, so that's the beginning of, and see if you can find out where they were, then you can do research in those areas and see what Indians or what native people were in those areas.
That's right.
And I don't know where to go from there to really prove it, but it's a start. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now I have the conversation, the note on the African ancestries too, because I studied that before I studied Native American history. Mm. Now you see the Illinois Federation of Indians.
Yes.
Have you heard of them?
I've not.
Well, I'm not either.
Okay. Brian, the Kellys have ancestors with the name Featherston, and they migrated from Illinois. Now, Allie Kelly, you wouldn't call him a Native American based on the way he looks, according to the way we've been programmed. But according to his ancestry, he was a Native American. Mm-hmm. Okay?
And for those listeners that are watching, me and Paul are actually cousins, so we're actually family. So Paul is sharing with me a relative named Ali. He's dark skinned, but he would be considered Indian. Is that what you're saying?
He is. His ancestry says he's definitely has Native American ancestry.
Yes.
Okay. Like one of my ancestors, he migrated from Ohio. Now, when he got to Alabama, they classified him as a Choctaw. Okay. And he served in the military in the colored unit, in a colored unit. Okay. All right. So there's some pieces that we can put together. But it's going to take some work, and it'll take some attorneys, okay, to really bring that on home.
That's right.
Because us ourselves, we won't be able to do it without bringing the law into it.
That's right. That's right. I mentioned in the last video I did, I said, we have to start playing chess. Mm-hmm. And the chess is going to be in the law. It's going to be in the paperwork. It's going to be in what you can prove. And I said, many battles you're fighting will not be publicly. They will be in these courthouses. And that is really what we're focused on, particularly when you start talking about those who, quote unquote, enslaved us. And that's a whole nother subject in itself. And, and we're all mixed. I mean, when you talk about those who are Indigenous and Native American who served in the U.S. Colored Unit. I mean, even in the U.S. Colored Troops during the Civil War, some of those servicemen were actually Creoles, and they were mixed. They were Europeans.
Right.
So we can get real deep with that, but it's always about what people look like, right?
Mm-hmm. Especially if you go to New Orleans.
Yeah, New Orleans is a whole bag. My family lived in New Orleans, from New Orleans, Louisiana, specifically Bunkie, Louisiana, or Evergreen. But yes, it's deep. It's deep, this whole thing called color. And so we have to have more, not just nuanced conversations, but really strip, some of the audience members and people who do come to the channel and say, well, you're all African. It was like, no, that's not true. We're Indigenous here. We've been here, and there's so much evidence. There's been people of melanin of different hues all over the world. So what are you going to say? What are you going to do? For instance, you go to East India. There are people in East India who are darker in complexion than us. Are you going to call them African? You better not. You better not. Culturally, you'll get insulted. They'll tell you stop it. You can't go to certain parts of Cambodia and call the darker skinned Cambodians African.
They are black people.
You can't do that in Australia. You can't do that in Europe. You can't do that in certain parts. You just can't do it. So everybody's not all African. There's nothing wrong with being from the continent. And what is African? When you talk about how many countries are in the continent, that's another thing too. The more specific you are, the more intelligent you are, as far as I'm concerned.
Yes. Now, here's another story I want to share with you, not with what's on the screen. I probably need to take that off, but there's a little town called Jacksonville in our area. My hometown was a bigger place, but all of that used to be owned by the Black Creeks. And you said it, Brian. They used to call them the Black Creeks, and they dropped black and just started calling them Creeks. Okay. Well, when Andrew Jackson got the Indian Removal Act passed in 1830, they took that land from Chief Ladiga. Now, you can't find too much information about Chief Ladiga. Now, they have a trail named with his name in that area, but you can't find any information about it, basically. Well, they took that entire area and renamed it Jacksonville. Okay? So anywhere you see, well, before I say that, you go to that. And then they gave him Piedmont, Alabama, in exchange. But Piedmont was right next to Spring Garden. So they were setting his people up to be taken to Oklahoma. You see? Okay? So anywhere you see the word Jackson on a town or Jacksonville or whatever, it was named after Andrew Jackson because he cleared the Native Americans off that land. Okay, like Jackson, Mississippi, Jacksonville, Florida, places like that. That's why it's named Jackson. Okay? Again, a lot of this stuff is in plain sight.
It sure is. And I've heard that Jackson himself had some melanin in him. That's a whole nother topic.
Well,
and is it usually your own doing it to you?
J.A. Rogers said that the man that he considered his father died a year before he was born. And there were no more men on the plantation, but black men. Okay, we don't know how Jackson looked. We really don't.
We don't. Oh, I'm so glad you're saying that, because some of these men never really had any sketches of themselves until they were older. And I tell you something, and this is a trick people can apply. Do not look at the pictures of men as they age. You look at the pictures when they were young. Roosevelt, FDR is a prime example. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, look at his picture when he was young. Look at all these men in history when they were younger. That is what they look like. That's who they truly are. Don't look at them when they're aged and they have gray hair. That's not their true representation. You must find young photos of them, and you're going to see the melanin all in their face. All in their face. When I saw that and I started realizing the pattern, I said, hold up. There's a lot of melanin in this country, and these high, I guess you can say, reputable men who the society has been calling them white. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Which goes back to that one drop rule. What he was saying, any one drop of blackness, you would either consider black, or guess depending on how light your hue was.
Right.
If you were more on the fair skin and you can pass for white, then you probably took on the white and denounced the black side of you. And what I've learned, I agree with you, Chris. Going to the baby pictures to see their true, the true color of who they are, and also as they get older, they actually transform back into like their DNA. So what's in their DNA will come out as kids, and as they get older on their death day. If you catch them, it's like Abraham Lincoln,
Yes.
The older he got, the more it's like his nostrils. It's like now you start to see it, as he got older. He's like, yes, he does have this African, or he has some blackness in him. You could tell he has some color in him, you know.
All day, every day.
So Paul,
Abraham, go ahead.
yes. Abraham Lincoln. Yeah. Are you going to say something?
Abraham Lincoln was from Kentucky. He was a Melanson. You ever heard of Melanσons?
Yes.
No.
Yes.
He was a Melanson. Mm-hmm. So they knew he was part black.
Yes. He even described himself as being dark. He said, I'm dark. He said it himself.
Uh-huh.
You know, so there's that part. It's just really interesting. And so I think, you know, the truth telling is coming out. And of course, we're just having to go back to receipts. And that's why I do a lot of digging in archives, a lot of digging in these books, because I find it. I said, oh, this is what this person looked like. This is what all the kings and the queens really look like. King John, I found one of King John. I said, uh-oh. You know, and yet you see these portraits, if you date them, as you look at what time they were sketched and who painted them, that's another thing. Who was the artist? You'll find that they got lighter and lighter and lighter, but that's not what they looked like. And some of these people were described differently, but you have to look in these old books. Where they say if you want to hide it from somebody, you put it in a book. That is why they made it illegal. Because imagine if we had saw the book 1671 and you saw all these indigenous, you know, dark curly haired people. Imagine if we had saw that during slavery and we were looking through that old book. Woo! That would have changed the game. You would have had a whole bunch of Nat Turners running around here. Whole bunch of them, because they would have realized. And about Nat Turner, and I have to say that, and I don't want to diminish that or make light of that, because, you know, we had Lisa Cypress on. She's a historian too of the Accomack Nation, and she's our complexion, you know, so she's telling it real, you know, and she went into detail about why Nat Turner and his, you know, his fellow his family, if you will, attacked the quote unquote white slave owners. The interesting stuff. She went in there and told it, because history never tells you the why. They just say, oh, he was crazy, he was touched by God. No, it was deeper than that. It's much deeper than that. But yes.
So I know we're running out of time. We don't want to keep.
Oh my gosh, I can talk to Paul all night.
That's right. I have two questions. The first question is, since learning about your indigenous roots, at what part in your journey did you really start to take on? Because I know as a kid you was given the knowledge, you was sat down in meetings with the elders. At what point did you really take pride, or how did learning about it early on affect you in your adult years?
Well, I went through a period where I resented people if they tried to treat me differently than other people, because I knew my history and I knew that I was a human being just like they were. Because see, when I first took a job with the federal government, there were some jobs that were just for white people. Well, it came a time when there was a guy who needed a promotion, and he had a job that everybody depended on. If he didn't do his job, maybe 500 people couldn't do their job. Well, they tried a lot of people for that job. They tried a lot of white guys, and then finally they found a sister that was part white, and she couldn't do it. Well, another guy that was close enough in the circle said, did you check this guy out? Do you see his paperwork? Not talking about me. And they said, yeah, come bring him over here and let's see if he could do the job. But when they offered me the job, most of my black friends ran up to me and said, you can't do that job. That's too hard, man. That's hard. But I went home to my father and told him, and he said, well, is anybody doing it now? I said, yeah. He said, well, you can do it too. And now I could accept that because I knew my history and I knew my capabilities. Okay, and I was probably about 28 at the time. So that's when it started coming together, because it was a time when I realized that I knew things that many people didn't know. Brian, you see what I'm saying?
Yes. Excellent.
And I was a little bit fearless. Okay. They would threaten me, and I just look at them and walk away because I knew they didn't control my fate. I determined my own fate. Okay. Now, if you have fear, they can manipulate you more. And one of my bosses actually told some of the people, said, what's wrong with him? He doesn't have enough fear. Okay. He was a human being just like everybody else. And that's just the way I looked at it. Now, I respected him for his position, but I still recognize my humanity and my ability and my capability and capacity. And being a young man, I knew that I hadn't reached my capacity limit. Okay, but if I stayed within that fear, I would have never reached that capacity or not even come close to it. Does that make sense, Brian?
Yes, it does. It does. What advice would you give to the listeners who are listening, who will be listening, on their journey to finding more about who they are? Because I know when I first started on my ancestry journey, I went to ancestry.com. I was like, I know I got some Indian roots. I know I got some. And then lo and behold, when I got the results, I was sadly disappointed because I was only looking for, I was like, I've been hearing about Indian in my own family for a long time. I says, I'm going to see the percentage. And I got it. And there was nothing in there. And I was baffled. I was like, did I just get bamboozled? Mm-hmm. I was like, where's the records? I was like, I know we got it, So what advice would you give those who are searching for their roots? And ancestry is not only it's not the end all be all. What advice would you share?
Okay. The first thing you need to know that Ancestry.com and 23andMe and some of those others are really very biased and flawed. They did not include any native North American native people in their test beds. So you won't find any connection to anyone in North America, okay? But when I took those two tests that I mentioned, it came up with a small amount of Native American ancestry, but guess where they were from? Colombia and Venezuela. So I said to myself, I don't know anybody in Colombia and Venezuela, but it goes to show that they knew what they were talking about, Native American, when they said they were first in Mexico. Okay? So they migrated to the Southeast Islands first, and then they were chased off out of the Southeast Islands, according to their account, with some of the people from India who were cannibals. Now, I'm saying people from India, not West India.
East India.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, it was called India Superior and India, I think maybe inferior. East India was superior and so forth.
Yes.
Have you ever thought about why did they call black people from the islands West Indians?
Mm-hmm. Right.
It's in plain sight again.
Again, that's right.
And when they say West Indians, they're not talking about Puerto Ricans and people they're talking about black people.
That's right.
They're talking about Jamaicans, Barbadians. That's who they're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Oh my goodness.
We're running out of time, already.
No, this is amazing. Paul, we love this because as a historian, you have not just family history, you have history. Okay. And that's what's beautiful about what you're speaking of today, because when you speak, there's so much that we can learn from you. And that is why I highly encourage everyone in their family to, you don't necessarily even have to formally call yourself a family historian, just start taking the history. So I guess one of the last questions I would have is, how do we start? If you know and you have certain stories, how do you start as an informal, if you will, family historian to get this stuff down on paper and yes, and in presentation form, but for the most part, get stuff down? How do we begin? What was your advice for people?
Well, the first advice I would tell people, I'd warn them that research on family history and genealogy is never complete. It will continue, and you have to be open to correction, because you will think you know the truth, but then you'll find information that will make you change what you know is the truth. And another thing is that you have to accept what you find, and and you can't reject if racial boundaries are violated when you do your research, because I remember one of my great grandmothers. I saw her on this farm, and she was white, and all the children were black. And I said, no, that's the slave owner. The slave owner's white. But it said that she was their mother. Okay? Now, I don't know if she was actually white, but she was on that census record as white. Okay? So you have to accept what you see and what you find. But going to your question, like I said earlier, start off by learning, getting to know your oldest members of families. And that's what that screen with all those names on it was doing, getting to know them. And you listen to their stories and record it, document it, okay? And that's where it begins. And then you can start doing research on the information that they gave you. Like by word of mouth, my father's mother said that they were Blackfoot, okay? But I did research and found that they lived in the area where the Black Creeks were, and I emphasized Black Creek, okay? And so I had to, and then I researched them and found out they were originally in Georgia, around the boundaries of Alabama, because see, that Alabama didn't become a state until 1819. And the reason that the original 13 colonies had to stop there is because the Creeks would not let them come across the Flint River, which runs between Alabama and Georgia. Okay? Mm-hmm. But it took Andrew Jackson to change all of that. Mm-hmm. Okay. Again, that man did a lot of damage to our people. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yes, indeed.
Okay, the Flint River was the boundary. They couldn't go any further than that. The Creeks were some tough people.
Yeah.
They were. Okay? Mm-hmm. And the Seminoles and the Creeks were the same, really. Osceola, the great Seminole leader, chief, was born in Alabama. And he moved to Florida. And then in the Second Seminole War, where they were fighting against slavery, mm-hmm. His second in command was a guy named John Horse. You ever heard of John Horse?
I have.
You have?
I know a lot about him, but I know the name, absolutely.
Well, he was a black man, and they called the area Fort Negro, a Negro fort, where they were. Okay? Just like they did in Africa when they went into Africa, they called it Negro land.
Yes.
Okay, but it was Dahomey. Okay. But so in other words, and this is a very important thing, and I know I'm getting off track. I should
That's
stop.
okay. I love it.
The term white is a myth, and it was invented over here. Okay. When you go back in history, you don't hear anybody calling themselves white. They call themselves Spaniards, French, British, or whatever. But when they got over here, they invented the term white to bring poor whites in with the wealthy whites. They didn't change their economic situation. They just gave them a whip and made them overseers. And you see the same dynamic working today. And you say, why do they vote against their own welfare? Because they live by the myth of being white people and having white privilege. But in reality, they're just human beings just like everybody else. Okay.
That's right. It's deep history. And speaking to that, you know, when you do your genealogy, you're going to find some things you did not know. And it's going to be very disturbing. Or depending on the oral history you have, you're going to be confused. But you have to keep digging to reconcile that, to keep knowing what's happening. I mean, I just use, you know, my story, my great grandmother. She was married first time to a man named Judge, and that's all she said. She married him when she was really young. And my mother used to ask her, she said, "Grandma, why don't you talk about your first husband?" And you know, the old folks would always give you a short answer, and she said, "Why?" And all I could remember was her first husband was named Judge. So one day I'm doing my genealogy and I come across a marriage record, and they had Judge question mark, I guess it was maybe his middle name, they couldn't read it, Randall. Oh. I said, Lord, today, Judge, there he is. Abigail Parrish. She was 18. Was she 18? I think she was maybe 14, 15. She was super young.
Yeah.
I said, but they didn't have any children. I said, there that man is. And I hadn't even been looking for him, but I had heard his name my whole life. All we knew was Judge. Judge Randall. I said, there is that marriage license. Wasn't looking for it. Yeah. So sometimes that oral history, you just hold on to it, don't even know where you need it. Right. That showed me who her first husband was, where they were, everything. So now I can go right back to the parish and get more information. So it's deep stuff, deep, deep, deep. You never know why. It's that little piece of negative information. I'm sorry, Brian.
It's a spiritual warfare. It's not a spiritual warfare, but it's the spiritual connecting to our ancestors and say, hey, show us the way. Show me the connection. So asking and just say, show me the way in this research. And it, like you said, it will be revealed, but sometimes without even looking. And sometimes we ask questions internally, and then without even looking, sometimes we stumble upon it, you know, of the data that we need.
Well, a lot of times in census reports, you have to look at the people around your people.
Yes, indeed.
And you get more information about the people around them, and you'll find your relatives, especially the maiden name of maybe your female ancestor, because you won't see her married name unless you find the marriage records. And those records are there as well after slavery anyway. And like I said, the Freedmen Bureau has some records of people that came out of slavery together married.
Yes. Wow. Well, Paul, this has been amazing. So amazing. We'd love to have you back for sure. This is an ongoing conversation.
Okay.
I love it.
Now I'm gonna tell you now, I'm in a learning mode, and I can learn too when I'm talking. I don't know everything, okay? And I'm first to say that, okay? That's how I get young people involved a little bit sometimes. I let them know that I can learn from them too. Okay. And if I can get them to see themselves in the research I've done, they can claim it as their own. Okay. So I'm expecting to learn from other people.
Yes.
Okay. That's the only way that we get to the truth. Okay.
That's right. As I always say, class is always in session.
Always.
Always in session. There's a teacher-student dynamic. We're teachers and we're students to each other. We can all we're teaching simultaneously or also learning as students if we're open-minded.
Exactly.
Wow. Well, Paul, thank you so much. We appreciate everything, all your knowledge.
Thank you.
Everything that you shared today. And I know this is going to inspire people to continue their journey, or at least begin it too. Mm-hmm. And that's really what we're trying to do on the Hidden Histories Collective, is get people to know that they're not alone in this journey, and that there's other people doing what they want to do or wish they could do. And so this is everything. Thank you.
It was a pleasure.
Yes. Wow.
Well, thank you for coming on.
Future conversations.
Yes.